Hello, my name is Paolo, and I perform as La Sonora Clandestina. La Sonora Clandestina translates to the clandestine sound. I try to make names and titles malleable to the listener, and oftentimes I associate it with sounds of marginalized people, and day by day find their voice and become louder. May our voices and ideas flourish. The music I make is a way to cope with diaspora, generational longing, the duality of presence and absence. While performing, my gear is set up over in Hawaii, a colorful ambient textile typically used to carry your harvest possessions. A child amongst other traditional uses. The one I used I bought on my first trip to Bolivia when I was 13. It serves as a reminder of who I and my ancestors are and where we are from. A past, present, and future intertwined.
Ha ha ha! I'm not against the concept of the personality ethic. I'm in favor of it, as long as it is a natural, congruent outgrowth of character. But if, like an iceberg, the tip of it, being personality, is separated from, truncated from, the great mass of the iceberg underneath the water, what happens is people begin to develop a life pattern of habits that are manipulative and often deceptive. They work with hidden agendas, and they're heavy into techniques and quick fix ideas, ways of getting what they want now. And sometimes they're able to, and they can move from one field of endeavor to another. However, study any long-term relationship with those manipulators. Study any long-term principles being violated will expose the flaw in that personality as well. They'll expose it. They'll be found out.
The character ethic contains the basic principles of effective living. You can only experience true success and enduring happiness if you learn and integrate these principles into your basic character. Remember, habit 1,
manipulate those people's minds and also the family. That's being reactive.
So when you're proactive, you tend not to blame people or circumstances for what happens to you. This is very hard for many people to accept emotionally, especially if you've had years and years of blaming their misery. So when you're proactive, someone else's behavior, you tend not to blame people, but when people do become proactive, it can have this very hard for many people to accept emotionally, especially if you've had years and years of blaming their misery. So when you're proactive, someone else's behavior, you tend not to blame people, but when people do become proactive, it can have this very hard for many people to accept emotionally, especially if you've had years and years. So when you're proactive, someone else's behavior, you tend not to blame people, but when people do become proactive, it can have this very hard for many people to accept emotionally, especially if you've had years and years of blaming their
But I chose to be But the more I thought about it, the more I swallowed that bitter pill. I came to realize that if I have the power to choose, I could choose.
Getting into the non-traditional noise and ambient music is definitely an incremental approach. It was for myself. It took some time to build up the patience, so to speak, and understand the medium. Because I think in pop music, it's realized on a different time scale. You've got like a melody or a concept or something that has to realize itself in a chorus or a phrase or a measure, at the very least 3 or 4 minute song. Whereas avant-garde, noisy stuff can go on for a real long time, where these random elements and textures are interacting in different ways, and eventually you might get a really cool, happy accident of just these multiple variables coalescing in a way. So I really like that. I like that instead of aiming for perfection as you do in more traditional forms of music, you're kind of liberating yourself to experiment with imperfections, and hopefully through the confluence of a lot of imperfect elements you get some cool thing overall.
My goodness, he said, and began patting the skunk. Believe me, that took a lot of spunk. about is apples.
Hi everyone, my name is Rachel. I'm the education manager at the Vera project, and I'm here with a group of amazing people who are here today to talk about a really important topic, a very current and salient topic to the ways that we commit to social change and enact change, especially in the name of Black Lives Matter. And I am not going to, I'm gonna allow these folks to introduce themselves. And we're going to have a panel discussion that talks about the different tactics and strategies that can be used to engage, create, and disrupt for social change. So how about Isaiah, would you like to go first?
Yeah, my name's Isaiah Janelle. My pronouns are he, him. I was the founder of the Seattle Change Coalition, and I was affiliated with them, but now I'm on a kind of different journey of social justice, education, and understanding. But yeah, I'm Isaiah Janelle.
Marshall.
Right on. Yeah. I'll jump in here. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Marshall of the Marshall Law Band. Being a musician, being a creative, being a community organizer, I get a chance to work with a lot of different factions and groups within the city. So it's been amazing getting a chance to do what we have already done in our musical background of trying to bring the musical community together and kind of translating that to social justice. So really excited to be here, and thank you all and the fellow panelists for checking in, because this is important stuff.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Nice meeting you both. My name is Joel Allen. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a member of the Black Collective Voice, one of the facilitators. And if you don't know the story, we came out of CHOP in response to this the sense of needing to organize, needing to bring community together, and also really wanting to highlight Black voices in particular, and Black women especially. So that is why I'm here, to represent for the collective that is Black Collective Voice. The views I'll be sharing are mine, but I do have approval to speak on behalf of the collective for this particular panel discussion. So thank you, seeing you all, peace, love, and blessings.
Hi, everyone. I am Tessa Hulls. Thanks for the opportunity. It's really great to meet all of you. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a visual artist and writer who found myself becoming an accidental comics activist in the last 6 weeks or so. And I'm talking pretty transparently about the fact that it's been a really overwhelming adjustment having my stuff go viral and suddenly having a new platform that I'm learning to use on the fly. So my grounding is mostly as an historian, and I basically see my role as an activist with trying to provide nuanced, broad scale context about some of the things that we see happening.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here. Very honored to be in this space with you. And we're just going to jump right into our first discussion question. And so it wouldn't be a all ages art space like the Vera Project without talking about art and music. So the first thing we're going to ask is about the role of music and art in social movements. How have you used creative strategies to disrupt the status quo and to inspire people to act for change? And I'll leave it open if anyone would like to start.
Right on. Well, I'm a musician, so I'll tackle that one for the people. For us, what came down to is, where do your passions lie? What are you going to be most passionate doing, and lending that skill to the larger movement? We'll get further into this, I'm sure, as the other panelists break down and can attest to this as well. This is hard work. And if you're doing something that you don't like or something that you're not passionate about, it's really easy to experience burnout. So I think that the role that arts have individually is, that's my fire that keeps me wanting to come back each and every day. Now, collectively, what I believe is that art is that glue, is that middle ground where people may view things this way, they may view things this way, but through art, they can process it in a different, independent, personal fashion. And what art is supposed to do is evoke emotions, evoke change within. And so that's what I've seen our music do, other musicians do, and the amazing art that's been floating around the internet has really allowed it so it's more digestible, it's more congealed, and it's also a personal experience like all art is.
Awesome. That was a great answer, Marshall. Shout out to you and the Marshall Law Band, actually. And in line with that, I was actually, I had the opportunity to speak at the Building Black Wealth Market, and I was able to, catch some of the vibes that the Marshall Law Band was putting down. So everything that was just said is right in line, right on point. And I think especially with the immediate community that we have, it's important to see local artists expressing themselves in the manner of which inspires people, which provides hope for the sustained movement, especially as Seattle is put in this interesting space of kind of serving as providing the frameworks for the national movement, if not with international perspective. In line with local artists such as the Marshall Law Band, we have Real Be Free, and he has a song called Pay the Fee, and that is in direct correlation to, the demands of restoring the lands back to the native people, the indigenous peoples who rightfully own the land and were dispossessed of the space. So really calling to light some of these issues that we're talking about, whether it's on a policy level, whether it's community conversations, but embedding that within our lyrics and within the vibrations is extremely important. And it dates back, all the way, to enslavement times, even if not before, as far as liberation movements, because you have songs like Following the Drinking Gourd or Wade in the Water. Like these songs are liberation songs and freedom songs masked in spirituals that were really directions for the enslaved and the captured peoples and the oppressed people to really take their orders and direction from, without having it become a sermon, because that would be something that can be punitive, and it continues to track through history. You can even think of a Sam Cooke. A change is going to come. A Marvin Gaye, what's going on? You can listen to a J. Cole and a Be Free, a Kendrick Lamar. And things are going to be all right. These are protest music. This is protest music, and these songs feed the soul, liberation, and also provide instruction for the people if you listen to the lyrics closely. So definitely a huge part of the movement, for sure, in my perspective.
I want to jump in real quick and ask if for either Marshall or Joelle, or if anyone else wants to chime in, the energy, you mentioned a lot of that energy and how it's rooted in a long history of resistance and liberation within ourselves or within oneself. And I am curious to know what the energy looks like on the ground, like in terms of sights and sounds and emotions. What does music at protest or direct action, what does that look like or feel like?
Well, I mean, at CHOP, prior towards CHOP, and then when, CHOP became CHOP, what it felt like was, it was just a very interesting swell of emotions, right? Because you have the anger and the pain and, the contention of the protest itself that was kind of it was like a face-off with police officers. And then about a block away, we were doing our music. And what our music was meant to be was a restorative place, a place where somebody could sit down if they wanted to, dance if they wanted to, go charge up either on their way in or way out, or to take a break. And then we would stop our music and open up the platform for someone to speak, like Nadia, who's a big founding member of Black Collective Voice. We had her come up onto our stage and speak for one of her first time speaking publicly to a protest. And that energy was just something special, because we played maybe a cover like Get Up, Stand Up, the classic Bob Marley song that fits in very well with the songs that Joelle just so eloquently broke down throughout the movement. And then we'd stop and say, hey, our job here is to recharge y'all. Go grab some water, go grab some snacks, and bring that into the protest, and go maybe tap somebody out that looks like they've been screaming for 7 straight hours. Like, go give that person a little bit of a break, and with your renewed spirit, touch the other people around you and say, hey, yeah, we're out here fighting, but let's do this together. Let's do this communally. And, that's what it looked like in like a kind of an intense, okay, we're here at the epicenter of the protest. When it comes to other events like that was just mentioned, building Black wealth, that is more of a rally type feel. So you go up there, you speak in between songs and during songs with lyrical content that speaks to the movement. But in between, you're really there to uplift people's spirits, because at a rally type thing is a little different than being on the front lines of the protest, but two different energies.
I'll follow up on that other space, because I think you just talked to a point that I feel pretty fundamental, where art and music and writing, it's all about reclamation of narrative, and power live and being able to tell your own story. And actually, in preparation for this, I looked up one of my favorite Audre Lorde quotes, which is, if I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive. And I feel like that's what art and music, it's our way of saying, these are our stories, this is our history, and we're not going to let anyone else tell it for us. And it's both renewing and powerful. And it's basically a way of saying, we're not going to let these systems of power define how we tell who we are.
Yeah, and to go off that, like to speak on the energy of it, I think that when I had the Seattle Youth Protest, we had a bunch of kids from 15 to 21 marching together, and we're shouting. But right as we got the speakers and everything going on, we played YG and, like you said, Kendrick, J. Cole, and instantly the energy changed drastically, and it felt like we didn't know each other, but we just unified through the music. And we also had sections where people were doing art and stuff on a big wooden board, and people were expressing themselves. And I just think that art and music is a language in which people can really just express their emotions. And, some people appreciate it more, some less, but it's just another way of protest that is super necessary. And like we've seen on Cap Hill, just the graffiti everywhere is just beautiful. Like society tells us it's negative and like it's, you know, criminals do that kind of things, but like it's really beautiful and really speaks to people. And I think that the energy everywhere with music and art is just amazing to see. But yeah, I think for the youth, especially regarding protests and stuff, having like speakers and like bands play, like it just is different. And it's just, it touches people in a variety of different ways. And, you know, a lot of people cope differently. And at least for myself, like when I hear music at the protests, it just inspires me to keep going. Like you said, like the martial law band doing what they do, it's like really amazing. But yeah.
Thanks, y'all. Really, really incredible to see and be witness to music and how it forms and shapes people on the ground. I'm also curious to hear a little bit more of how it shows up in digital spaces too. So Tessa, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. If you can speak a little bit to your work with the comics and how that role has really, and like how that may have informed your role with CHOP and the ongoing protests, especially in June. And if you can speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, so a little bit of context, because context is my thing. I had lived on 16th and Denver for half a decade, and so that was my neighborhood. And I don't actually live in Seattle anymore. I'm on book deadline for a graphic novel, so I'm supposed to be in Port Townsend, like ignoring the outside world, finishing a book. But I also feel like right now, history is being made and you have to choose what side of it you're going to be on. And if you have something that you can throw into this fight, now is the time to do it. It's an ethical obligation. So basically, I was hearing from all my friends who I've known for over a decade, who were frontline protesters, telling me what was happening on the ground and seeing how that was being portrayed in the media, and felt like I should go in and try and provide some sort of nuanced information as to what was happening. So I went into CHOP with no real sense of what I was going to try and do. I just kind of hit the ground with a blank notebook and started talking to people. And so the first comic that I did was about the shift from Chaz to CHOP, so autonomous zone to occupied and then organized protest, and how that kind of encapsulated the way in which the space was trying to focus on the fact that this was a movement about Black Lives Matter, and that needed to remain the focus, and that it was based in activism and education and not just kind of a free-for-all, which is often what happens in leaderless spaces. And so, yeah, that post went viral on Instagram, and suddenly my idea of like, I'm a professional freelancer, I have some platform, and then sort of being like, oh God, I didn't want that much of a platform. I have to think through a lot of ethical quandaries in a hurry. And so basically what I did is I started trying to find the most contentious, confusing situations and be like, okay, here, look, this is everything I'm hearing. This is what's known. This is the background of this area in Seattle. And I'm going to try and show the complexity of everything that's happening here, because most of what's happening in mainstream media coverage is choosing one side or one thread over another. So that is what I attempted to do on Instagram. And it's been really interesting noticing how quickly that platform shifted with people doing kind of informational activist slide decks, and how that seems to be a really good way for people to get their information now, because it does allow for a lot more dense information in a way that's still easily digestible. So yeah, I feel like I'm kind of part of this shift in social media that sort of popped up in a hurry because there was a need for it.
I'm so glad you brought up the slide decks, because one of the inspirations for this panel was seeing a slide deck about different ways that you can be engaged and the different tactics that come with, if you're finding your lane or your role in the movement, and whether you're physically on the ground or you're working really hard at creating comics overnight, or if you're supplying resources to hotspots in terms of protests and places like CHOP. There's so many different tactics out there. And so I'm curious to know from you all, what tactics would you like to see more of in in the context that we're speaking to, right, in the movement for Black lives, and what makes those tactics successful in creating change?
Awesome. Great question. I'll try to tackle it first. I feel pretty strongly about this question. One of the big things for me is trying to create a sustainable movement, and sustainability, is something that's built for the long haul. It's okay to have breaks, and it's okay to make mistakes and fail, fail hard, fail again, but fail better. And a big thing for me is just seeing the escalation in state-sponsored violence. And it goes unchecked, and it's something that gets, justified from federal courts and, sometimes with public opinion, and really the fact that these are our fellow citizens, these are our neighbors, but yet they put on a badge and they go to their 9 to 5, and of course it's tax funded money, so it's almost like we're paying to be to experience trauma and abuse. And it's really striking to me. I would love to see protesters create a sense of sustainability by enacting countermeasures. So if you're going to a protest and or you can expect that there's going to be a police line there, and that they're going to use less lethal, quote unquote, tactics, that we come prepared with that. So if they're going to use chemical agents like pepper spray, if they're going to flashbang crowds, if they're going to use rubber bullets, then we should be coming prepared with gas masks, maybe do-it-yourself gas masks, goggles, helmets, things that will allow us to withstand the brunt of some of these aggressive tactics, so that the movement itself, it looks stronger, it is a little bit more fortified, but also, I think that goes directly with sustainability. Coupled with the on the ground, boots to the ground, front lines protesting, comes this aspect of being informed and educating yourself. So understanding the way in which our system operates, through laws and legislation and policy, being informed on that, and which policies that we want to see championed, which ones we can have leverage on, and things that we can really see enacted that will take some of that immediate pressure off of our push, to get equitable treatment for all peoples and the most marginalized peoples within our communities. So.
Yeah, and kind of build off what Joelle was saying, I think that there needs to be a balance of physical protesting and things to do with policies and educating yourself, especially with younger kids my age. Because a lot of people that I've seen 20 and younger can't go to the protests because their parents won't allow them for safety reasons, or other things, but they have a choice to stay home and educate themselves. And I think that also comments on our society's educational program itself. What are we learning in that? But I totally agree that there has to be a balance, because if we physically protest 100% of the time, that's great too. But like Joel said, if you don't know what you're protesting for, the policies going on, then what are you really doing it for? And what I'm saying, you're not going to get as much out of it as you can.
Absolutely. And, kind of piggybacking off of that is, it seems like, especially here in Seattle, there's just going to be something funky happening in Cap Hill or Westlake. That's just it doesn't even matter. It almost feels like, and this is why Black Collective Voice is so powerful and impactful in the work that Tess does as well, because it refocuses things. But it almost feels like, regardless of what we're protesting for, if you put a bunch of police in riot gear at that place, then you're going to get a swarm of people to show up and be there. And so I believe, something I've learned from one of my OGs in the protest game, Julie C., who's an amazing MC out here and works closely with Folklife and Seattle Center and whatnot. And she said, there's no such thing as a bad protester. And that really, I took that to heart, because I was kind of out here questioning, hey, why is this person doing that? Why is this person doing that? And I realized, really, I have to control myself, and I need to behave in the way I set the example that I need to show other people, and hope that they follow by example. So what I'd love to see is people mobilizing outside of these sanctioned places. I know CHOP or whatever isn't a sanctioned place, but yes, let's get CHOP going, but let's walk through Green Lake one of my ideas that I'd love to see happen and work with y'all here on this panel or anybody watching this is I want to get a flatbed truck, set up the MLB, and let's go through some of these neighborhoods that aren't affected by the problems that we're trying to express to people. You know, if you drive through Laurel Hirsch, you drive through Green Lake, you know, we go through these Bellevue, you know, we go through these places where people are experiencing it not in person, but through a screen. And then we bring that to them directly in a peaceful manner, of course, but let's try to get some of these people who don't understand and who aren't affected and make them be affected. I thought that that was one of the huge things that CHOP did. It was, okay, as we've seen, there's violence happening in this city every single day. There's homelessness occurring every place in our city all the time. But when that violence was brought out to Capitol Hill and that homelessness was brought out right there to Capitol Hill, now all of a sudden it's some sort of eyesore to the city when people that aren't melanated or you know, marginalized traditionally are affected by it. Now it's a problem. So this is where I believe we need to continue doing what we're going to do, and these larger protests are going to occur, but let's get out to different cities and let's do different tactics, you know? So that's what I would love to see is people bringing the quote unquote fight to communities that aren't engaged right now.
That's awesome. I think that is a wonderful idea. Yeah, and I think that's a way in which creativity can really be brought into the conversation is how do you disrupt in a way that won't be expected? I also think that what everyone else in the panel has touched on with what is going to be sustainable, that needs to be the most important factor, particularly as one of the things that's so interesting and so hopeful about this moment is that there are so many new allies who seem to be really taking to the streets for the first time. And I think ensuring that they're not joining this protest movement just as a fad, that's going to be really crucial. And so I want to speak to the allies and accomplices who are watching this because I am in that camp and I know firsthand that it's really challenging trying to figure out how to respectfully amplify and uplift Black and Indigenous voices if you don't belong to those communities because you don't experience that oppression. And I think trying to identify ways in which Black people are doing this labor every day where you can step in and say, I can take this one off your plate, like trying to identify those and throwing yourself in that game however possible, that's part of what's going to be needed. And from a numbers perspective, like, keep throwing yourself into that space. I also think, yeah, diversity of tactics, you know, that's what we're in this panel to talk about, and that we each need to find our own way to engage. And I think it's really important that we spend some time to sit with our own boundaries, and that's not something that you can do unless you really pause and reflect. And I think the internet tells people that it's not okay to do that. And it's kind of ironic that I have this internet platform, but I'm really saying, like, spend some time thinking about who you are as an activist away from the internet and then go back in.
So much good. Oh, I'm sorry, Isaiah. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to comment what Tessa said about educating yourself. You know, like something I think is really important too is understand the intersectionality of what's going on. And myself, that these protests and working with other youth activists have really pushed me into being an uncomfortable space where I had to think about all intersections of, you know, Black lives on a deeper, more personal level. And like, for instance, when we had our march, all Black males were in front. And that was kind of all the pictures taken were just Black males, and it wasn't intersectional at all. And the majority of people there were women of color, right? And so it's like things like that where I think understand the intersectionality of these movements and of the Black community and just all people when protesting and stuff is really important. But yeah, I just wanted to comment on that because that's how you brought that up in a way, and I think that's really valuable.
I love that. And I feel like one of the things I've taken away from this conversation is that you can establish your boundaries and find your lane from where your skills are, but it's no matter what, it shouldn't be comfortable if you're coming from a place of being an ally, or if you're thinking about the intersections of how your work is impacting Black and Indigenous communities across all identity lines, that, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable no matter where you're coming from, but it's crucial work. And I hate to pull away from this wonderful deep dive in this because it's so important. And I know we're also getting close to time. So I do want to just acknowledge with the broader theme of VeraTV this week with the August 4th primary ballot coming up is we're also hoping that folks are in some way or another getting involved in civic engagement, whether that's calling your rep or voting. And so I'm curious to know from you all if you see voting as an essential tactic in the Black Lives Matter movement. Why or why not?
Boom. Well, I'll get started because that's short and sweet. Absolutely. Whatever tactics that we have available to us, it is absolutely it's essential that we explore and exhaust any and all options. You know, I myself, growing up, I kind of had like a very interesting relationship, as many young kids do, with voting. You know, I'm over here, oh, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. You know, at the end of the day, I really liken it to wearing a mask. You know, go and do it, get it out the way. It's the responsible thing to do, regardless of, you know, your varying opinions. And I want to validate people's opinions. Yes, we are disenfranchised. Yes, the two-party system is antiquated, but let's just go ahead and vote and do the best we can and, you know, continue to work on the system as a whole. But while we're within the system, let's do what we can to make it as bearable as possible.
Yeah, I think to go off that, you know, I'm 20 years old, and it's funny that you say when I was younger, like, because I talk to my friends a lot about voting, because, you know, my generation, it seems if voting doesn't work, right? We've been like conscious of like what's going on for probably like 4 years now. When we're 16. And we've seen this kind of ping pong match of Republican Democrats. Oh, they pass some laws. Oh, they would take them down. They pass some laws, you know, and I think it's really interesting. I want to say, though, yes, vote. Yes, I think that will help in many different ways. And but I do think that the way in which we push for voting has to change, especially in schools. Like, I personally don't know much about, besides mayor and governor, about how voting works within our state. You know, and I'm 20 years old. And so, like, I think that there needs to be a push on education and learning the importance of voting. And I think that will come with all the reforms happening in the social media and young people talking. And I also think that voting is going to, the people who get voted into the offices and councils is going to change drastically, I feel like. I think that in the next 20 years, we'll have the most diverse, you know, whatever that is in our country. And so that's good. But I also like, J. Cole says in his song, one of his songs, he says, democracy is so slow. He's like, I don't vote because it's so slow. And I just think that critique is really interesting. I think that it's like, how can we tell people in my generation, hey, go out to vote, when they say, look at what that's done? What am I supposed to say? You know, what am I supposed to argue against that? Because I've seen that too. You know, so I just think that critique is really interesting. But I do think voting needs to happen. Voting is very essential, and I think that it's going to open a lot of doors to a lot of different things here in the future.
Does anyone else want to jump in before I move on to the next question?
I refer to Tessa. If you like, I do have a response, but I want to be mindful about how much room I'm taking up.
It's all you, Joelle.
All right, awesome. So, I mean, for me, like, interesting question. Definitely a two-part question. And I think first, it is critically important for us to recognize the system that we're in. You know, we are in a two-party system. Voting is important. The ways that it shows up, for example, would be, you know, who we put into city council, who we voted for. We had, you know, an overwhelming amount of people on the city council say that they are going to defund the police by 50%, which is one of the demands that kind of came out of CHOP. So, you know, like, that's really important. Also, passing the Amazon tax, you know, the Tax Amazon campaign, extremely important. So these are two very critical and immediate ways in which we can see voting working for us, because we put certain people in these positions of power and influence. And still, there's a whole nother answer to that question, because this is a rotten and broken system where it is a two-party system, that, it's like two hands that kind of wash each other. For example, even if you vote for the good guys into a broken system, the system will still find a way to perpetuate and harm the most marginalized people. You can think of, Joe Biden in his long tenure, and with the expansion of, the criminal, the criminal industrial complex, the prison industrial complex, and the three strikes law, and you think of George of Bill Clinton and his role in that, and not really protecting the most marginalized people, but passing laws in order to harm them. You can even bring it to President Obama, and there's been a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement came directly from under his administration, and yet there's been zero police officers prosecuted for the fatal shootings of unarmed Black men and women and people of color in general. So all that to say, voting itself isn't enough. It is a tool and a vehicle that can assist us, but it is foolish to think that that is the only system or the only thing that can that will create the change that we seek. But it's also in the same line foolish and irresponsible to not look at the history, especially with the Black Liberation Movement after Reconstruction, knowing that that period of time with Black people in these key positions, they were passing laws that affected all people, that built infrastructure for healthcare, for education, and it was a very short 8 years. But there's a reason why voter suppression is occurring. There's a reason why, in the civil rights era, that we're still in today, even, why voting was one of the foremost things that people tried to get really mass participation on. So although it isn't the only way, nor is it what I argue the most effective way, it does have its importance and its role, but it also has extreme limitations. And I think that it is more harmful to vote and be uninformed than to vote just for the sake. So yeah, like that's a big thing. And then lastly, we're so wrapped up in federal politics and national politics, where really what matters is, who's in your backyard. Those are the things that affect you directly, that you have almost immediate control over. Still, it is a long process, just like J. Cole said, and even Mozzie has a song. He's like, look at who they brought into the office after Obama, being Trump. But then he says, I ain't even vote, so I know I'm part of the problem. So this real introspective analysis, but you have to use all the tools at your disposal. They're there. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but that touches, because for to be continued another time.
I really appreciate that so much, Joelle. And to your point of it being a tactic but not the tactic, I always think of, to quote Audre Lorde again, because she's incredible, the master's tools will not undo, oh goodness, I'm going to butcher it, goodness. The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house, and thinking about how, like, you got to break things down from the ground up. And so voting is a tactic for now. Who knows what our political party system will look like in the future. In interest of time, I do want to ask just one more quick question, if maybe two folks can answer. In thinking about another essential group in movements, especially in the movement for Black liberation, I think about our youth and how maybe some of them can't be on the streets, but often when I'm out and about, it is a lot of young people that I see out there. So I'm curious to know from you all, given that young people are often at the front lines, how can we better support youth leadership in these movements?
I'll go real quick. I'll try to make it brief. The biggest thing I think is to pass on the information and the strategies that we have of organizing to really treat this as a relay race. So a lot of people that gain notoriety and influence and, if you will, power, they kind of hold on to that. The torch needs to be passed. Young people need to be able to lead. They need to be able to see themselves as contemporaries and peers of longtime activists and social movement organizers, and not just as advocates or council people or clogs in the system. They need to be empowered as the movement, because all liberation movements have started with the young people. And they're really making decisions that are going to affect them in their generation, and the young generation moving forward. So really the older people need to kind of, appreciate you, grandma, grandpa, have a seat. We heard what you were telling us, and let us take it from here.
I'll say something really quick, which is just that when I was younger, history was presented as being something really boring where you just memorize a bunch of dates from a book. And I think one of the ways in which systems of power stop younger generations from claiming their own narrative is by not allowing their stories to be passed down. And I think history is so exciting. And with social media, we can make it super exciting. And I think if we can start letting the youth get excited about their history and change that narrative, it will help keep that fire lit.
Absolutely. I'll let the youth of us all get the final word over there. But I personally would just like to tell the youth, yo, don't be afraid to ask. For example, when we were out at CHOP, renting the stage, getting the sound equipment, all that, I think it probably totaled, I don't know, maybe $2,000, $3,000 or something like that. And I know me as, a 20-year-old, I'd be like, $3,000? There is no way that we are going to go and do this, But we have to understand that we're a community. We're here to do this together. And if you need resources, if you need the MLB or somebody else to pull up at your event, just ask, and you'll be surprised how much you'll get out of it. What John Lewis, who I have his graphic novel, right here, he was 23 when he spoke at the March on Washington, I believe, right? So come on, young folks. We need y'all. We need y'all, please. All right. Isaiah, it's on you.
Well, yeah, as a young person, I guess you could say, even though we're all pretty young. I think what I've heard from a lot of people my age is that, a lot of adults in this work who have had a lot more experience and a lot more, I want to say, education in a way. There's a lack of trust, I want to say, I think, because we are younger, and there's a lack of, I just want to stick with trust, I think. And I think that it's hard because it seems that it's a repetitive cycle of the youth. Okay, we listen to the older people and then we get into their positions, right? But then the issues are for the younger people, and it's a cycle that's never, broken. And I think that we especially in the government, need to trust younger people to take positions in Congress and in all sorts of different leadership positions, because I think that we have a perspective that's forever changing, and that is different even from people who are, you got upper 20s, 30s, it's very different just off of those couple years. But I think, yeah, just trust. And I think that just showing, like you guys said, just we as youth need to also put ourselves out there to learn more and to just ask for help. Like you said, Marshall, just asking for advice and for stories of experience. But I think that there has to be a wave in which youth take positions of leadership and power so that we can change the future together. Because, Congress is all old white men, and it's how do we get them out and get younger, women of color in the positions to, change the narrative, because it would change instantly, right? And so I don't know. I just think that trust is huge right now for youth. And I think that, but that also comes with our responsibility of reaching out and asking questions and taking action. But yeah.
Okay, everyone just dropped major knowledge on this panel. Thank you so much. I do want to offer, does anyone have any upcoming events, projects that we should be following, organizations, social media handles? How can we stay in touch with you, follow you, support your work, and support the work of Black and Indigenous communities?
Yeah, I could do a quick plug for Black Collective Voice. So if you want to follow us on Instagram, it's black.collective.voice. Yeah, and also visit our website, which is blackcollectivevoice.org. From there, you can volunteer, you can understand a little bit more about us, and really just find ways to plug in and to connect. Also, if you are so inclined, funding is a crucial part of a sustainable movement. And that's one thing that I didn't mention when I was talking about the youth. Older people who have more resources, pass down that money to the youth, empower them, let them grow, let them build. With that, you can Venmo us. That's how we're accepting donations right now. It's Black Collective Voice on Venmo as well. And you can reach out to me by going to Black Collective Voice, being like, hey, Joel Allen, I want to talk to him. Send us an email and it'll get to where it needs to be. So appreciate everybody. Peace, power, love, and blessings. Thanks for watching and listening.
Anyone have anything else they want to pitch? They're out there.
Shoot. I'll always jump in when that opportunity is presented, you know what I mean, as a musician. So yeah, we're coming up here. We took all our experiences and we were out there. It felt like about a month and a half straight. We went to Guimas Island as a collection of musicians that experienced what we did at CHOP and at other protests. And we made an album, came right back, went to the studio and recorded it in 5 days with a really cool guy named Jack Candino. This week, we're mixing and mastering it and hoping to have that as well as a comic book and some other things out by mid or late August. That is hopefully going to represent the collective experience we've all gone through. So much love to anybody. And again, I want to echo the sentiment. Whatever your talent is, whatever it is that you love doing, just bring it to the table, please. Because I guarantee you somebody somewhere needs that. Much love.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So we've been talking a lot about finding sustainable ways to do this. So I am sort of shifting my platform and committing to doing an hour a day towards making what I do a monthly piece that looks into one aspect of the struggle for Black liberation. And so I'm picking topics and lining them up ahead of time. And the first one I'm doing is going to be on bicycles and Black liberation, because that's actually my main beat, is as a historian about bicycles as an intersectional tool for social change. So basically each month I'm going to be producing a who, what, why, when, where, how of like who's doing work, how do you support them? And I'm shifting my platform to that. So that's what I'll be doing on Instagram as @TessaHulls. But yeah, I just want to second that idea, like just jump in. You have a niche in this fight, your voice is needed, and I will speak to the fact that you can figure it out on the fly.
I don't have any personal things to share for organization right now, but I do want to send a message to youth individuals, this is a difficult time for everyone. So take care of yourself and find your escape where you can relax a little bit. And just to all the youth, I think what we see now, or at least me and my generation, is how powerful the unification of people is, and I think that it's everywhere. And I think that we just need to use it and come together and be with your loved ones and friends in a safe way with Corona and everything going on. But I'm very blessed to be with all you and learning from you guys. And I know that there are people out there that everyone can learn from. And so just take advantage of the opportunities and have these discussions and uncomfortable conversations and just work to be the best person you can be. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Wonderful. Thanks again, everyone on the panel, for your time and sharing your stories, your creativity, your history, your education, your emotional labor too. And also for folks who are watching, now you have multiple folks that you can be following, engage with. You have multiple opportunities to buy Black, to give to Black-led organizations, and stay in contact and follow in support of the Black Lives Matter movement and liberation for Black lives. So thank you all for tuning in, and see you hopefully on the streets, or at, maybe I shouldn't be endorsing that. But thanks again, everybody. Have a good night.